Our mission is to help Australia grow towards a greener future. So as part of that, we comply with all the requirements of an ISO 9001 company. So what that means is it just means we're committed to produce and supply quality products and services, and ensures that we maintain the highest standards, not just with our products, but throughout the whole company and all our processes. So at our site in Kwinana, we have a lab that we have our quality assurance and quality compliance officers, and they're testing daily every batch of fertiliser or soil that goes out to make sure that we meet the Australian standards for potting mix. And we also do soil testing, we do water testing, we can do pathogen testing, and also Australian standard potting mix testing. It's all in Kwinana. Yep. So I come and do soil tests for our commercial customers, but you can also send soil samples into us, and we can do them that way as well. So yeah, we can do all that for sure. We also have one of the only granulation plants in Western Australia. So what that allows us to do is make fully homogeneous fertiliser prills, and allows us to put things like other additives in there, like blood and bone, humates, beneficial bacteria, added nutrients like added calcium, which is lacking in our soil. So yeah, it makes us able to do a lot of other things that other fertiliser companies can't do. And Baileys are also FertCare accredited. So that means we're assessed by ASPAC, who are the Australian Soil and Plant Analysis Council, and they actually audit us every year to make sure that we're complying with all their standards. And Baileys also, more in the metro area, have a commercial fertiliser and foliar application side of the business. So we currently look after a lot of the state government, all their fertiliser spreading, some schools, even some golf courses. And we have two big 2-tonne trucks that can do about 40 to 60 hectares in a day. So it allows us to cover big areas, within a day, which most customers can't do by themselves. And one other thing you might not know about Baileys products is all these products have been developed through years and years of soil testing and talking to our commercial customers, seeing what works, what doesn't work, what they're after, and then those products are used by commercial customers and then turned into what we call retail products. So you can guarantee if you're using Baileys, it's going to work. So like Lisa touched on earlier, what is it about Perth soils? Well, they're some of the most infertile soils in the world and actually have less than 1% organic matter. So very good at drainage, but not so good at hanging on to nutrients, hanging on to that water in the soil, and makes it difficult for a lot of plants to grow. So there's two things we can do with that. We can either, like I said, plant natives that are suited to those soils, or we have to amend the soil to the plant. Now, everyone probably would have heard of the Swan Coastal Plain. That's an area that stretches from the Darling Scarp to the ocean on the coast, and as far north, about 100k north, and then all the way down here through to Cape Naturalist. So that coastal plain is made up of about 5 different what we call dune systems, and the first dune system is the Dalyellup dune system, and that's very like calcareous soils made up of like crushed up shells and sea creatures over many years, and then brought in by the ocean and dropped onto the land. Behind that you have the the Spearwood dune system, which is more your silica type soils, your yellow soils that you see like bricky sand, and that's usually overlaid on limestone as well. Then you have the Bassendean dune system, and they are your pale, sort of getting into your grey, your dark grey, deep soils, and also where a majority of sort of Perth's wetlands are. And then we have more sands behind that again, which is the Pinjarra Plain, which is brown pockets of sand, but also just starting to get into some loamy pockets before you get into the Darling Scarp, which is your rocky red type dirt. So like I said, the one main thing they all have is that extremely low fertility, poor nutrient holding capacity, and also low water holding capacity. So how do we turn sands into soil? What's the main thing we can do to change?
Matter.
Yep, organic matter or clay, adding clay. And there's two types of clay that we use here in WA is your bentonite clay and then kaolin clay. And people have preference over which one to use, but really if you're using any of them, they're doing some benefit to your soil. There's two different types of bentonite clay. You have sodium bentonite and then calcium bentonite. So if you're using bentonite, you want to make sure you're using the calcium bentonite because the sodium obviously has salts in it, and that's not really good for a lot of our plants. And they use the sodium bentonite more for when you see the white clay on dam walls. That's what they're using, is the sodium bentonite. And the way you've got to think of clay is like a magnet or a sponge. And when you put that into the soil, it's actually hanging on to those nutrients and hanging on to water. And will actually hang on to, well, clay will hang on to 6 times more water than sand by itself. So it shows you, just by adding a little bit, you're getting a lot of benefit. And the sort of rates you want to use, for bentonite, you're looking at about 1 kg per square metre dug into the top 100, 200 mils of soil. And kaolin clay is a bit higher, it's around the 5 kg. But like I said, they both have lots of benefits when added to your soil. And like you said, the next thing would be to add organic matter. And that's things like animal manure, composts, green waste, straw, wood chips, so things like pine bark, even sawdust. But with these products, and especially like Lisa said before, is if you're using animal manure, you've got to make sure it's composted, because animal manure by nature is very dense in nutrients, and it'll also it'll burn your plant if you use it as a straight. So you need to compost it for at least a few weeks to make sure that you've made all those nutrients in there available to the plant. And rates, when you're talking animal manure, you're looking at about 2 kgs per square metre for cow manure, 1 kg per square metre for chicken manure, and then 2.5 kg for things like sheep manure and horse manure. So what are we doing when we're adding these organics and clay to our soil? Has anyone heard of the soil food web? So the soil food web is described as the transfer of energy between species in an ecosystem. So that starts from everywhere from your plant, the plant getting sunlight, water, nutrient, into the soil where you've got all your biology. So you've got your beneficial bacterias, you've got things like mycorrhizal, you've got nematodes. All those little organisms are helping to break down the clay and make it available to the plant. And mycorrhizal is a good one because it has a synergy with the plant roots. So it'll actually attach itself to the plant root and grab nutrients, feed it into the root, and then vice versa, the root gives the mycorrhizal some of its own nutrients. So that they have a very good symbolic relationship. And if you're breaking up your soil all the time, it tends to break that mycorrhizal up. so you're not getting that full benefit. And our natives especially love mycorrhizal. It's all through our soils here, so it's definitely a good thing to try and help build that. And then you work your way up into things like your arthropods, and then your earthworms, bugs, and then from your bugs into your bird life, and etc. etc. So the whole soil food web is trying to make that one big, what would you call it? So like one big cycle that you want to continue all the time. So what are these? What are these microbes? What do they do for your soil? I don't have a picture today. Normally I'd show you a picture of the soil food web, but by adding beneficial microbes, what you're doing is you're providing available nutrients to the plant, and then you're protecting the plant through things like drought or stresses, or if you've got some high salinity, and it also protects the plant from diseases. So why should we only use composted products? Well, if you have a compost by nature has lots of different products in it, so therefore you're getting a variety of nutrients, and it makes those nutrients in there available to the plant. They're not just locked up. Composting, make sure there's no weed seeds in there, so you're not going to get any germination of weeds. Things like pathogens, industrial chemicals helps to break them down if there's any in the soil, and diseases, things like dieback as well. It also improves your soil structure and, as I said, boosts your microbiology. It'll help aerate the soil and also give you stronger plants. And by using compost on a regular basis, you'll actually start to reduce the amount of fertilisers you actually need. So by using compost, you can reduce fertiliser use by up to 10%. So you're getting benefit as well, and some cost saving by using compost. And we need to think of, when we're fertilising our plants and our lawns, for instance, is think more of you're feeding the soil rather than the plant, because it's actually the soil that's feeding the plant, not you fertilising it. A lot of people say, I'm going out to feed the lawn or feed a plant. You're actually feeding the soil. So what should we look for when we're looking for good quality products? And for instance, like with any of your soils, you're looking for that Australian standard. So if you have a look on our bags, you'll see this red square with the ticks. That means that these products have been made to that Australian standard. So there is actually an Australian standard for what should be in a potting mix, and that can be things like nutrients and pH, how much air porosity, CEC, things like that. So you're making sure that you're actually getting what it says in the bag. Now there's heaps and heaps of different types of potting mixes. Soil improvers, for instance, and the main difference is if you look at, say, Bunnings, and you go in, you got like a lower price potting mix, and then you've got premium potting mixes up to like $10 or more. The main difference is usually with the cheaper alternatives is you're getting less organic matter and more sand, and you also don't have all the benefits that a premium potting mix has. So, for instance, like in Baileys potting mix, we had things like your wetting agent, so Growsorb, and we're adding amendments like zeolite, which will actually hang on to your nutrients in the soil to stop them leaching. And then we can add lots of other things in there as well, like slow release fertilisers. So with the Baileys Premium, you get 3 to 4 and 8 to 9 months. So you're actually getting 9 months of feeding in that one product. Whereas if you bought a cheaper one, you're not getting hardly any nutrient value. So it's something to look out for when you're trying to choose a product. Make sure you're getting a premium product with all those additives. And the reason there's different products, say you might have a veg and herb or a rose potting mix or an azalea, they've just got a different design to help those plants, because they might grow better in say a lower pH, or a native. You don't want phosphorus in there because they don't like phosphorus at all. So you want to pick a product that suits your plant as well. And the other thing to look for is with Baileys products, because we're adding GrowSorb in there, you'll find we've got the Smart Approved mark and WaterWise mark, and that means that our products have been approved by the Water Corp as a water saving product. So it gives you another benefit of help you to reduce your water usage, and therefore reducing your nutrient runoff as well. So if I'm talking slow release fertilisers, there's millions of different types of fertilisers out there, but they sort of come in a few main groups. First of all, you have your straights, which are things like urea, sulfate ammonia, magnesium sulfate, all those sort of products are what we call a straight. And then you have a blended fertiliser. So if you grab a bag of blended fertiliser for your lawn or for your garden, what that means is that product is made up of individual nutrients. So you'll have a bit of nitrogen, bit of phosphorus, bit of potassium, maybe a bit of trace, and they're all in their individual, what we call a prill. The problem with those type of products is they are very irregular when you're putting them out, because you can imagine if you throw it all out, you're getting a bit of nitrogen here, like I said, phosphorus all over the place. So what you want to be looking for is what we call a homogeneous prill or a compound prill. And that means that all those individual nutrients have been crushed up and go through a process where they're put back together in one prill, and therefore you're getting every nutrient in every single prill that you're putting out. So products like this, you'll notice they're all the same colour, they're all uniform, whereas a blend will be, different colours, a bit of red, bit of brown, bit of white in there. So you want to make sure you're trying to get a compound as well.
So if you get a fertiliser with all different colours in it, it is actually, each prill's different?
Yes, yeah, because it hasn't been put through that process to make it one cohesive product. And this Soil Matters, which we brought out a couple of years ago, like I said, through our plant we can actually add things like blood and bone. So then that's helping to actually build your soil as well, because you're getting some organic matter. And then from compounds you move into your slow release and what we call control release. So there's a slight difference with those. With our slow release, which are sort of like these products that have got a bit of organic matter in it, it's because the soil microbes take a lot longer to break it down than a conventional fertiliser, which, once you water, they just release the nutrients straight into the soil. And then you have a control release. Now, a control release is all those coloured fertiliser you see in your pots when you buy them in your plants. You'll see the little coloured, they can be green or yellow or black in your pots. And that technology is sort of the next step up. And at Baileys we use a product called Polyon technology. And what it is, it's like a polyethylene coating that actually goes over all those nutrients to help regulate, when the nutrients are released. And the way it does that is through what they sort of like reverse osmosis. So the easiest way to explain that is like your pores in your skin. So when you sweat or when you get hot, your pores open and allows moisture out to cool you down. Well, the Polyon technology is pretty much doing the same thing. So as a bit of moisture comes in there, it'll actually start to release through these micro pores and release nutrient into your soil. But they go one step further, where they'll actually put the nutrients in different sections. So if you can imagine sections inside a fertiliser prill, the first one might be, say, phosphorus. and that'll release first because you want your, that'll help with your root development, and roots need that first of all when they start to grow. Then you might get a bit of nitrogen behind that and potassium, etc., etc. And the other benefit is that they don't work on like your upfront fertilisers by putting water on them and then they start to release. Polyon technology works through temperature control. So it actually won't release until the temperature reaches like that 21, 22 degrees, then it'll start to release. So if you're putting it out in cooler weather, it's actually not going to release much nutrient until, you know, the plant actually starts to grow in the warmer climate. So, and the last thing I wanted to speak about was wetting agents. And again, Lisa touched a bit on that today, but wetting agents aren't utilised enough in Western Australia. With all my customers, I tell them that you should be using wetting agents every time you fertilise, because sandy soils by nature have like a waxy coating over each granule, and what that does when they dry out, it seals the surface. So if you're out there hand watering your lawn, for instance, or your garden, the water's starting to pool up and then it runs away, that means your surface has become hydrophobic. And it just means that it's sealed, so the water's looking for somewhere to go. If you use a wetting agent, the polymers and wetting agents are designed to break up that waxy layer. And if you ever want to try it and you've got an area that starts to pull up, you can put some wetting agent out and you'll see it disappear straight away because it's broken that layer up. So yeah, so whenever you're fertilising, you should be looking at putting a wetting agent out. And Baileys, we do a product called GrowSorb, and we do that in a granule and a liquid form. So you can get two different forms. They both have their pros and cons. Your liquid works instantly, so you put it out, but you have to water it in straight away. Whereas with your granules, you can actually put it out now, and I can wait, leave it there and wait for my irrigation to come in or for it to rain. And it'll also, the granules will actually release, you know, over say a couple of week period. It'll start each time it gets a rain event or there's you're watering, it'll release a little bit more. So it's a really good product to use for, say, your pot plants or existing gardens. Whereas your liquids, a lot of people tend to use that on their lawn. It's a bit easier to put out. But there's no reason why you can't use the granules as well.
Do some of your products contain a wetting agent?
Yeah, so that's like with the WaterWise mark and the Smarter mark, yeah. That means, yeah, there's probably, well, there will be wetting agent in those. So we try, Baileys have always tried to make those premium products that have you know, all those benefits in one bag. And same with this product, you know, it has beneficial microbes, all those beneficials to help with your soil. So yeah, so if you can take one message home today, it's try and use wetting agents a lot more, and you'll find your plants and your lawn will be a lot better for it.